Hey everyone, it is early August, which means that it is time for the August garden tour. Now, unlike the previous months, July actually went by pretty slowly. I think it's the only month of the year that's felt like that. Maybe it's because there was so much more to do in the garden this month than there has been in previous months. Basically, a lot exploded in growth during July. So basically all of my flowers have bloomed except for the morning glory on my cart. I've been doing a lot of tasks, I've been deadheading, I'm harvesting more than I can eat, and it's just been a really fun month so far. So July was great, looking forward to more growth in August, but let's go ahead and take a look and see how much has changed in the garden since last month.
Let's go ahead and start in the usual place, which is this center raised bed. This is the largest of all of my raised beds. In the corner here I have Supertunia, Bubblegum Vista, so I have 4 total, 1 in each corner. Then in the middle here I have 3 different types of zinnias. This is the Oklahoma Pink zinnia right there. Then we have Cinderella Peach with a little pollinator on it. And then the last one is the Queen Lime Orange, which you can see right here. I'll show you some other ones close up when we get to the other side of the garden, but I'm much happier with these zinnias being in this raised bed because last year I had the Benary giant zinnias, which are on the other side of the deck right now, and those got really tall, over 5 feet, which basically anytime the wind blew, I got nervous they were all going to fall over, and it just made it kind of harder to see the rest of the garden. So I really like these and the height that these are for being in the center of my garden. Coming down in front of this raised bed, I have made some changes here. So on the outside I have 2 heucheras, which I think I'm going to transplant down into the parkway, so the area between the sidewalk and the street. And then I pulled 2 delphiniums that were in here in July. So like I said in a previous video, I'm kind of shifting away from perennials, at least flower-wise, and more towards annuals, because I find that one, the annuals tend to be in bloom throughout the entire season, where, like, for example, the heucheras bloomed for a little bit, the delphiniums only bloomed for a little bit as well, and I'd rather have something that's going to look really pretty, full of blooms throughout the season. And because I change my mind so often, I want to have something that I can pull at the end of the season and replace with something that I'm in the mood for that year. So in this pot here, I just have some of these trailing plants here. These are potato vines, I forget the variety, and then just some flowers back there as well. So I really like how these pots look, and I also like them because the plants in here are shorter, whereas I felt like the delphiniums were competing with the flowers up here. So that is what we have going on in the front of the garden. Now I'll swing around and show you what is going on in my flower cart. So some really exciting changes happened in July. Basically, my sunflowers grew and bloomed. This one is over 7 feet. This one I'd say is probably about 6 feet. And I thought they were the same variety, but they do look a little bit different. I'll get closer in just a second, but I think this one might be Moulin Rouge and that one's Chocolate Cherry, just looking at the difference in the petal colors. Also, I could not be happier with how the Morning Glory has turned out on the top of this cart. So this cart I got from Deer Park Ironworks. It is my #1 favorite addition to the garden this year, because last year this was really just storage, and I like the ability to have some vertical interest in the garden, which is important when you're working with a smaller garden. Now before I go and show you the sunflowers, up in here I have some alyssum and then 2 Supertunia vistas growing on either side. That, I always forget the name of that plant, but it really hasn't bloomed. It bloomed earlier and kind of stopped, so I probably will not get that next year. And then underneath here, in my little chandelier, I have some super bells and a spider plant. And what's really cool is the spider plant is putting off these runners, which they normally do anyway, but I just really like the look of it here. What has obviously changed is the amount of sunlight these plants get. So it basically was a full sun environment, especially for the chandelier, until the Morning Glory took over the top. I'm still waiting for this morning glory to bloom. I've had a few others bloom in the other places that I have it, but this one so far has not bloomed yet. I have another Super Bells down here in the bottom of the cart, my watering can, and one of my ferns. I enjoy the ferns enough, but I think, well, one, there's just a ton of sun here, so there's only a few limited areas in my garden that they'll really be happy, and I don't think I love them enough kind of for the space they take up, although I do like how this is kind of hiding my trash can. So I don't know. I think my plan is to try to keep this alive inside over winter, so if I do that, I'll bring it out to the garden next year. If not, I don't think I'll be purchasing any new ferns for my garden space. So now, let me go ahead and do a close-up on the sunflowers, which are also full of pollinators right now. So this one here, I think this one is the Moulin Rouge. You can see that the petal color is definitely more red than the next one I'm going to show you. So I think that's Moulin Rouge, but again, maybe it's just two of the same variety that are turning out to be a little bit different. Now I'm going to climb on a chair, and if I fall, I will leave that in the video. But up here, if you can see, the petals are just a much darker color. I mean, they almost look black, but they're very, very dark brown. So that's why I think this one is chocolate cherry. And it's also, again, why I should label things when I plant them. But I'm really happy with, one, how tall it's gotten, and two, how pretty it is. It's currently supported by twine and some of the morning glory vines. Shifting now to my herb garden here, I've been very, very happy with all of the herbs that I've gotten. I do think next year I'll kind of narrow it down. I don't know if I'll have quite as many, or I might have the same amount, but multiples of the ones that I really, really love. So I have regular mint here, parsley, oregano, chocolate mint, definitely a favorite. Gonna continue to get chocolate mint, tricolor sage, lemon thyme and regular thyme, rosemary, basil, lavender here. These on the top were all new to me this year and I'm absolutely in love. So lemongrass, pineapple sage, and lemon balm. Definitely going to get those next year. And then I have pesto basil in the corner over there. So I have enjoyed this setup. The cart right here, or not the cart, the shelves, I do wish were a little bit further out because it's kind of a balance between making sure the pots are far enough forward that the herbs are growing up fine. I've had some kind of getting a little bent because they're hitting the shelf on top, but for the most part, I really have enjoyed this little setup of my herb garden. Heading over to this corner of the deck, so I have my alyssum here on the table, which looks really great, and I'm happy that it still looks so great because it's in such a small container that I basically have to water it twice a day, and I often forget about the second time until it's already sad and droopy looking. So I'm happy that that one keeps bouncing back. Over here, we kind of get into my berry/fruit section. So I have two strawberry plants here in this galvanized container. I've been getting strawberries basically every day for the last few weeks. Behind it here is my lemon tree where I have one lemon currently growing on it. I don't know if, I mean, lemon trees are fun to have, but I get maybe 1 to 2 lemons and it takes months and months. So I don't know if it's really worth it versus buying from the store, but it's fun to have, so I'm still going to keep it. I do obviously have to bring this one indoors over winter. Then behind it I have a hydrangea, elephant ear, and another hydrangea back there. The hydrangeas have definitely had a harder time this year because the weather has been, well, a little bit crazy, I'd say, compared to other years. So we had a lot of rain, which was causing a lot of fungal issues, then extreme heat that we don't usually get here. So you can see there are some signs of like powdery mildew on there, but the plant is still putting out new growth and new buds, so still making me happy. This elephant ear right here, I'm going to overwinter this one as well, probably dig up the bulb and just replant it, but I thought this would be taller by now, so I don't know if I maybe need to put this in a larger container for next year, but we will see. Then back here I have my raspberry bush, which I just got some raspberries off of, and I think they are starting to put on some new buds of fruit. I have 2 blueberry bushes. This one here is the dwarf variety, and this one is a like standard size variety. And then I have my rose, which is not in bloom right now, but I think I've had 3 flushes of blooms so far, and it has put out a bunch of new growth. So I'm really happy that I added my rose bush to the garden this year. Behind these containers is another raised bed with all of my Gomphrena, which these are one of my absolute favorites. I have 4 different varieties in here. I have strawberry, strawberry fields, I think it's what it's called, QAS orange, QAS purple, and QAS carmine right there. I continue to harvest these to dry, which makes me really happy. The only thing I wish that I did differently last year was have some trailing plants here. And I think I'm gonna do a whole video on, because I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do the same next year versus what I'm going to do different. And I think I'll definitely do a whole video on my thoughts for the 2023 garden pretty soon here. Starting down this path on the other side of my center raised bed here, I have one of my 2 rhubarb plants. So this is the second year that I've been growing the rhubarb plants. I left them just outside during the winter. They came back perfectly fine, and I've harvested a few stalks already. I think you want to harvest about 1/3 of rhubarb during your second year. So I have one here, one on the other side that I'll show you in just a second. Over here next to the bed of Gomphrena, I have the giant dahlia zinnias. So I have 2 giant varieties of zinnias. This is the giant dahlia, that's the Benary. I don't know if I noticed a huge difference in how they look. They grow pretty much about the same size. The blooms look pretty similar. So these are taller and have larger flowers than the zinnias that are growing in here. So those were the ones specifically that I had in the center raised bed, and you can see how tall they are now that they're on the ground. So on the ground was the better place to plant them. Next to the giant dahlia zinnias, I have my 2 tomato plants. I have my red and yellow cherry tomato, and one thing I've realized is that having a red and yellow cherry tomato basically intertwined together, it's sometimes difficult for me to know if it's a ripe yellow tomato or a still ripening red tomato just in its yellow stage. But I have been harvesting tomatoes every single day. I have more tomatoes than I can physically eat, so there is a lot of tomato sauce that will be frozen in my future. I also have a couple nasturtiums in there as well. Down in front, I have a pepper plant, which again has just been producing peppers like crazy. I recently just harvested. Same thing with this little patio eggplant here. So these are really tiny little eggplants that are basically ready to harvest at about that size. Now coming back to the back of my raised bed here, I have some asters, which I grew last year, but I didn't give them enough space. So I wasn't sure if I was gonna grow them this year, and I am so happy I did, because look at how pretty they are. They put out so many blooms. This was just a mixed seed pack, so I wasn't sure what colors they were going to be. I didn't have any purple last year, and I absolutely love the purple as well. So very happy with those. I've actually already ordered seeds for more asters to grow next year. And then this is back in the center bed, so you can see the queen lime orange a little bit closer over here. Now my asters are actually growing in the same pot as my Aronia berry, also known as a chokeberry, which I need to harvest these berries today. Basically all the ones that are black are ready to harvest. All the ones that still have a little bit red on them need to stay on the plant a little bit longer. But the asters I grew, didn't know where I was going to put them, so that's why I plopped them right in here. So next year they're going to get much more space and not just be in the pot of an existing plant. We're now on the other side of the container with the Aronia berry. So here is my other rhubarb plant. Again, that's little patio eggplant. And then I have the Benary zinnias, again, the ones that were in the center raised bed last year. So you can see they look very similar to the giant dahlias. They are right now just a couple inches shorter than me, so probably just under 5 feet tall there. Over in this bed, I have 2 more Super Tunia Vistas. These are jazzberries. In front, I have a pot full of zinnias that I basically ran out of room for in the center bed. So again, the Oklahoma pink and the Queen Lime Orange. Now also in this bed back here I have straw flowers. This is my first time growing straw flowers. I really like them. The main reason for growing them was because, like the Gomphrena, they dry pretty close to how they look when they're fresh, but I don't know if I love the look of them in this raised bed. They're very vertical and narrow, and I think I'd rather have something a bit bushier in this raised bed, but that is where they are living for now. Next to the bed with the straw flowers, I have my dahlias. There are 2 plants here growing in the grow bags. The only one in bloom right now is Otto's Thrill, which is absolutely beautiful. It has put out so many blooms already. I've harvested a ton for bouquets. And then next to it is the Thomas A. Edison, which has put out, I think, 1 bloom, and there's a bunch of buds there. So I don't know if this is normally a later blooming one than the others, but this one has just been going crazy with the blooms. Down in front of these 2 dahlias, I have my Cantaloupe plant. So I only had 1 melon plant this year. I had, I think, 7 or 8 last year. But back here, you can see an actual cantaloupe, which looks like it's going to be ready here pretty soon to harvest. So that is exciting. Swinging over here, this is my lowest raised bed. I have decorative dahlias which are in desperate need of deadheading here. These are the fire pot. Absolutely love the color of the blooms. I threw some nasturtiums in the front here. They're doing fine. I'll keep them there for now. I just basically had too many of those, so again, threw them wherever. But then my favorite part, which just started blooming in the last few days, are these sunflowers. So these are the Sunrich Summer Province single sunflowers. So they're single stem sunflowers. I could plant them about 4 inches together, and you can see how pretty they are. They make me so happy. I don't know how long they're going to be in bloom for, but I think after they're done blooming, I'm still going to leave the heads of the sunflowers on there and just put in some more like fall flowers, and I think that'll look really cool. In front of this bed, I have 2 pots of Gomphrena. So I have QIS pink, which is very, very pale pink, and then more of the QIS purple. You can see there how pale of a pink that is, but it's really pretty. And then the purple right there. There are about 4 plants, I think, in these containers, and I absolutely love how these turned out. I think I'm definitely going to have more Gomphrena in pots as well, and not just in my raised beds. Now over here I have more dahlias, and I feel sad because I always try to do these at the beginning of the month, but of course, like 2 weeks ago everything was blooming all at the same time. So here I have another Thomas A. Edison. You can see a bloom starting there. Those are a deep purple color. I have the Otto's Thrill, again blooming like crazy. The Michaela Miranda, which was one that I had mislabeled, was just covered in blooms, and now there's 1 left that needs to be deadheaded, but a bunch of buds ready to burst again soon. And then this is the one I overwintered last year, which was labeled Penhill Watermelon, but I'm pretty sure is Cafe au lait. So you can see the blooms there as well. I did have a flower box of Morning Glory, but they didn't get enough sun over here. They just weren't very happy, so I did end up pulling those, and I just moved my other sunflower that was in the pot over a few inches. So that is what we have going on in this corner now. So I'll do one last scan of the garden back to where we started in front of this center raised bed here. I really do learn more and more each year as far as what works in my space and what makes me happy. And I am definitely very, very happy with some of the changes that I made to my garden this year. So I did forget the back garden in the July garden tour, and I almost forgot it in the August garden tour, but luckily I just remembered. So a bit of a background on this back deck. Originally, I was not going to have any plants out here, just to keep it a seating area. Then I decided that all of the plants that I grew and had extras of that couldn't fit in the front garden got moved back here. And now I'm already working on plans to turn this into a second garden. Now it won't be as intense as the front deck, but I definitely want some raised beds kind of along this back wall here filled with flowers. So I'll kind of take you along with that as those plans develop. But back here I have the second fern because I've realized again that this deck here gets the morning sun. It's a little less harsh than the afternoon sun, so the fern is much happier and less crispy over here. Then in front of this table, I have the 2 miniature roses and then 2 mini blueberry plants. And the rose, so these are miniature knockout roses. These are in bloom again. And I really like the red color of the blooms back here with the blue of the cushions and the rug. Blueberry plants, no major updates since the video I posted showing when I planted them. Again, I don't think I'm getting any fruit this year, but we'll see kind of how they overwinter and what happens next year. Now over here, I have a pepper plant. There's actually 2 in this bag I got from the Chicago Botanic Garden. They were just giving away tiny little seedlings. I took 2, I didn't write down the name, and now I've forgotten the name, but I mean, they're definitely not bell peppers. If you can see that in there. So we'll see kind of what those turn into. I have an extra basil plant, 2 bags of extra zinnias, the Queen Lime Orange and the Oklahoma Pink right there. Along this back wall I have, I think 4 total sunflowers, 2 in each bag here, 1 here. They look very sad because again, these are the ones that I'm basically doing nothing to. No fertilizer, poorly staked, but keeping them back here anyways. Then I have a lavender plant, which I need to figure out what I'm going to do with those, since those are perennials as well. I definitely don't want to keep it in the grow bag. I have another cantaloupe plant here, which I don't think there's any melons developing on it yet. But I do have to keep checking because last year I completely missed a cantaloupe. To be fair, it was growing underneath the raised bed, so I feel like that's not quite as much my fault. Then I have some grow bags of Gomphrena, purple and carmine, 1 of carmine, and some of the QIS pink. Coming along the back, another lavender, the raspberry bush I propagated, which I still can't believe I propagated this spring, and it's almost as large as the original. And then Morning Glory, and this one has had a few blooms. It's not blooming right at this moment. You can see some of the flower blooms there. And yeah, I think that is everything growing here on the back deck.
Okay, so that is everything for the garden tour for August. I will link down the previous garden tours for this year, and I'll also link to last year's August garden tour, just in case you want to compare the 2 together. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.